Some journeys don't just take you from one place to another. Sometimes, they take you beyond the living world, into the unknown. Late one evening, Emma and Jack, a young couple deeply in love, boarded the last train home after a peaceful weekend getaway. It was the final train of the night, almost empty, except for a few scattered passengers. They found a quiet corner in the last carriage, snuggling close, lost in each other's dreams for the future. But, unbeknownst to them, this journey was about to plunge them into a nightmare from which there would be no waking. Suddenly, an hour into their journey, the train screeched to a violent stop. The lights flickered before everything was swallowed by darkness. Emma's heartbeat quickened as she gripped Jack's hand. "What's happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Jack, trying to stay calm, assured her it was just a technical glitch. But minutes passed, and the darkness was absolute. Jack switched on his phone's flashlight and together, they made their way through the eerily empty carriages. Not a soul in sight. The train was silent, too silent. Then, the whispering began. "Help us," a faint, chilling sound echoed through the stillness. Emma and Jack followed the haunting whispers to a locked compartment. Inside, pale, ghostly figures stared back at them, hollow eyes filled with desperation. The air turned ice-cold as they reached out with skeletal hands, their voices now a chilling chorus, "Free us." Terrified, Emma and Jack backed away, but the spirits moved closer. One of them pointed to an ancient, rusted lever in the corner. "Pull it," the ghost rasped. "Set us free." With shaking hands, Jack approached the lever. The weight of the unknown pressed down on him as he hesitated. Then, with all his strength, he pulled. In an instant, a blinding light engulfed the train. The spirits' wails filled the air, echoing through the empty carriages, and just as quickly as it had begun, it was over. The ghosts vanished. The train moved once again, as if nothing had ever happened. Emma and Jack reached their destination, shaken but alive. They stepped off the train in silence, never speaking of that night again. But deep down, they knew, they had crossed into a world not meant for the living. A world where spirits of the past still roamed, waiting to be set free. Some journeys never truly end, they linger, like shadows in the dark. Thank you for listening. If you like this story, please like, share and subscribe my channel for more horror stories. Ouija board, unleashing the unknown. On a stormy night, when the lights go out, some games are better left untouched, or else, they might just touch back. It was a night where the storm raged outside, and the power was gone. Glenn, Maddie, Ryan, and Sheila, four restless friends, found themselves trapped inside, their evening plans ruined. Bored and desperate for something to do, they rummaged through Glenn's house, uncovering forgotten board games and old books. Just as they were about to give up, Maddie stumbled upon something buried deep in a closet. "Hey, what's this?" Maddie asked, holding up a dusty, old box. Her eyes narrowed as she read the faded label, Ouija, the mystifying oracle. Glenn's face paled. "That's a Ouija board," he said. "My grandma gave it to me when I was a kid. She told me it's a family heirloom, but she also warned me it was dangerous." Intrigued, Ryan asked, "What does it do?" Glenn hesitated. "It's supposed to let you talk to the dead. But my grandma always said, you never know what you might contact. Some spirits, some of them are evil." Maddie, ever the skeptic, smirked. "Come on, it's just a game. What's the worst that could happen?" Sheila nodded, urging Glenn to give it a try. Although uneasy, Glenn didn't want to seem like a coward, so he reluctantly agreed. They gathered in the basement, where the storm's howls were muffled by the walls, but the tension inside was thick. They set up the board, lit a few candles, and turned off the lights. In a hushed tone, they asked, "Is anyone here?" Nothing. The air was still. "Is anyone here?" Again, nothing. They laughed it off, joking that it was just an old toy. Then, the planchette moved. It spelled out, "Hello." Shock turned to excitement. "Who are you?" they asked. The board spelled out, "I am your friend." The friends exchanged curious glances. "What is your name?" they asked. The board responded, "David." At first, David seemed friendly. He told them he had died in a car accident and was lonely. He answered their questions about life, death, and the afterlife, even making light-hearted jokes. The group felt a strange connection to this spirit and believed they had made a harmless friend. But curiosity got the best of Glenn. He asked, "David, can you show us a sign that you're really here?" The board spelled "OK," and suddenly, the candles flickered violently. The basement door slammed shut with a thunderous bang. Panic set in as they rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard they tried, it was locked tight. Outside, the storm grew fiercer, rain beating on the windows like fists pounding to get in. They turned back to the board, and to their horror, the planchette moved on its own, spelling, "Now you are mine." The realization hit hard. They weren't speaking to a lonely spirit. David was no friend. He was a demon, and by forgetting to say goodbye, they had broken the rules. The portal was open, and the demon had control. The board spoke again, too late. A low growl echoed through the room. Red eyes gleamed from the shadows. Desperate, Sheila's eyes fell upon a circle of salt on the floor. Glenn remembered his grandmother's words, "Salt protects against evil spirits." With trembling hands, they quickly poured the salt around them, forming a protective circle. The red eyes halted, hesitating. A high-pitched screech filled the air as the growling stopped. The planchette, however, continued to move, frantically circling the board, searching for a way in. The friends clung to each other, eyes fixed on the board scraping against the invisible barrier of salt. "We have to end the session properly," Glenn shouted over the howling wind that seeped in through the walls. Maddie, her hands shaking, took control. "David, we are ending this session. Goodbye." She pushed the planchette to "goodbye" with a force that echoed through the room. The candles flickered one last time before stabilizing. The oppressive feeling lifted, the air becoming lighter. The basement door creaked open on its own, revealing the dimly lit hallway above. They burst into the living room, where the power flickered back on. The TV hummed with static before settling on the late-night news. Finally, Sheila broke the silence, her voice hoarse. "Next time, let's stick to board games that don't involve spirits." Maddie nodded, still hugging her knees. "Agreed." Ryan stood at the window, watching as the storm finally began to ease. "At least we have a story to tell, right?" But Glenn's eyes drifted back to the box, the Ouija board that started it all. His voice was barely a whisper. "A story no one will ever believe. Some things should never be played with." Some stories are whispered to keep children away from danger, but some dangers hide in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Ellie had just turned 18. For as long as she could remember, summer meant visiting her grandparents' peaceful farm, a place full of warm memories, happy animals, and endless fields. But there was something that always sent a shiver down her spine, something that lurked silently in the wheat field, the scarecrow. It seemed innocent enough, a worn-out hat, a patched coat, and a burlap sack for a face. Yet, there was something off about it. Its button eyes, sewn on like a doll's, felt like they were always watching. Ellie couldn't explain why, but the scarecrow unnerved her in a way she couldn't shake. She avoided it as much as possible, never daring to get too close, never meeting its gaze. But one night, things changed. Ellie had the worst dream of her life. In her nightmare, she found herself in the wheat field, but she wasn't alone. The scarecrow had come to life. It followed her, its twisted form moving unnaturally fast. No matter how hard she ran, it always closed in. Its rotting hands grabbed her, and as she looked into its hollow eyes, she saw something terrifying, a flash of red, like fire burning behind the buttons. She woke up, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. Desperate, she ran to her grandparents' room, pleading with them to take down the scarecrow. But they only smiled softly and assured her it was just a dream. "The scarecrow's there to protect the crops," they said. "There's nothing to be afraid of." But Ellie knew better. She could feel it in her bones, something was wrong. That night, Ellie couldn't rest. Her grandparents might not believe her, but she couldn't sit still, knowing the scarecrow was out there, lurking. So, she made a decision. Armed with a pair of scissors, she slipped out of the house under the cover of darkness. The wind howled through the wheat as she made her way to the scarecrow, fear clawing at her heart, but determination pushing her forward. When she finally stood in front of it, the air felt thick with dread. Trembling, Ellie reached for its hat and yanked it off. Beneath the tattered hat wasn't a pile of straw. It was a human skull. Ellie's breath hitched, the scissors slipping from her hand. She staggered back, only to trip over something lying in the dirt. Bones. She stared in horror at the pile of remains scattered at the scarecrow's feet. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. But before she could react, she felt a cold, bony hand rest on her shoulder. She turned around, and there it was, the scarecrow, now standing over her, no longer lifeless. Its stitched smile twisted into something sinister. "Hello, Ellie," it rasped, its voice like nails scraping against stone. "I've been waiting for you." Her scream echoed through the empty fields as the world faded into black. Her grandparents woke up to an eerie silence. Ellie's bed was empty. She was gone. Panic set in, and they scoured the house, then the fields, calling her name. But there was no sign of Ellie. They contacted the police, who searched tirelessly through the farm. They found her scissors, her footprints, leading right to the scarecrow. But Ellie was nowhere to be found. No one suspected the scarecrow, but if anyone had looked closely, they would have noticed something different. Under its ragged hat, the scarecrow now bore a new skull. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, but others find a way to come alive. What do you think? Is there something sinister lurking in the dark corners of your life, waiting to reveal itself? Sometimes, the most ordinary things hide the darkest secrets. So, the next time you see something that feels wrong, trust your instincts. Because you never know what might be watching you.